Hello everybody, welcome to the video. In today's episode, we'll be discussing naval combat in its entirety. Now this will be general PvP, that can help you in both adventure battles and hourglass battles. Though I will make a more in-depth hourglass video in the future, purely on all of the best strategies and playstyles that are necessary for success in hourglass. But let's get started with naval combat. You can't hope to defend yourself and your treasure if you can't handle the power of your own vessel. In a previous episode of this series, I covered the entirety of ship basics, but I won't bore you with a repeat, though do check out the video if you haven't seen it already. But we will cover PvP ship basics such as roles of the crew and different strategies. There are a total of 4 roles on a crew: helm, bilge, flex, and cannoneer. But when on smaller ships such as the brigantine or sloop, some crew members share multiple roles. Helm is the one in charge of steering the ship, and is usually barking orders, since they tend to be the one to see everything that is going on, and is in charge of where the ship will go. If the helm can't keep angle for the cannoneers, then everyone is doomed. The bilge is the one to make sure that the ship is kept from sinking to the icy depths, repairing when needed and keeping the hull as dry as can be. The flex is the one at the mercy of the helm's and bilge's demands. Whether or not the sails need raising or the water needs bailing, the flex is the helping hand to everyone on the ship, and when no one is giving them orders, they will be the secondary cannoneer to help keep pressure on the enemy ship. Now, the main cannoneer is the sharpshooter of the crew, in charge of keeping constant pressure on the enemy. Their aim needs to be intertwined with the angling prowess of the helm. If the crew can't angle the ship for shots, nor can they land them, then they're as good as sunk. Everyone on the crew needs to learn to work together as cogs of a well-oiled machine, to stay strong against those who seek to trifle with them. Once everyone learns to play their part, you'll become a threat on the seas. True legends, making your names known to all who sail upon the waves. When on the brigantine, the helm will take over the bilge's work as well, while the flex and cannoneer keep doing their jobs, meaning the helm will have to be the one to repair the ship, bail the water, and keep the angle. And of course they have the flex to call for help whenever things get too intense, though I would recommend that you try to only get their assistance when you're about to lose angle or there are simply too many hulls, since you want to allow your cannoneers to apply as much pressure as they can on the enemy. This goes for all bilge rats of any ship type, but again, as the helm, never lose angle, since every second your cannoneers aren't able to fire at the enemy, you are losing your foothold. So let your crew communicate to you when you're below deck repairing. Let them tell you if your ship is about to lose angle. And if the ship won't handle you taking the time to steer the wheel, then ask for the flex to help repair while you fix the angle. Or, if you're in too deep and can't get back in time, then allow the flex to fix the angle while you continue your repairs. But again, only take your flex off the cannons when absolutely necessary, since they need to apply pressure at all times. With the flex and cannoneer, the goal is to land shots on the enemy ship. Simple as it would seem, though there are different things you should aim for. If you are more confident in your aim, you can aim for the enemy cannoneers, as it would disrupt their ability to fire upon you, allowing you to gain a better foothold, like a game of King of the Hill. Another thing to strive for is spreading shots on the enemy ship, since this will cause the helm/bilge to spend less time on the wheel or cannon, and more time below deck. And if you spread enough shots, then it will cause the enemy flex to head below deck to support their helm, or bilge if this is on a galleon, which creates an opening for you to try and land a 1-ball on the enemy cannoneer. Landing a cannonball directly on an enemy player will instantly kill them, no matter how much health they've got. So this is an important thing to keep in mind when firing at the enemy ship. Any experienced sailor would attempt to revive their teammate to avoid having a disadvantage during a battle. So I would recommend aiming for where you have just 1-balled the enemy so they can't get away with a revive. Note, if a player is reviving a downed teammate, the green spiral that leads to the spirit will start to turn golden. So if you see that, aim for that player immediately. On top of all of that, you may also wish to aim for their masts with chain shots, since a single chain shot is enough to knock a mast of a brigantine or galleon, while 2 are needed for a sloop's mast. Also, blunderbombs are a useful tool for knocking an enemy ship out of rotation. If you hit the front or back of an enemy ship, they will rotate respectively, though it can get complicated depending on where you are on the map, since blunderbombs change their knockback effect depending on where you are in relation to the Sea Dog Tavern. So make sure to feel out how the blunderbombs will rotate the enemy ship during battles. Firebombs are another option for ordnance, though I wouldn't recommend them for any crews that are especially experienced, since it will only mildly inconvenience them, as a simple cannonball barrage could create more havoc than a firebomb would. And the same could be said for scattershots in high-level PvP. Scattershots are bundles of 4 mini cannonballs, the range is extremely low, and the spread is even more unreliable. They can be fun for casual PvP, but I would not recommend it for a sweatier fight, as they are incapable of dealing damage more than a tier 2 hull. We will cover that in a minute. This advice for each of the rules will help generally for all ship types, but for the sloop, it is important to note that one person will play as helm and bilge, and the other person will play flex and cannoneer, acting very similarly to the brigantine, but both players having to be much more independent. And the galleon acts very differently, for the helm is to never repair or bail unless there is an emergency. The helm should be the one to steer, coordinate the crew, help fire the cannons, and watch for boarders. The bilgerat is much more below deck than on the other ships, as this is the only ship where only one person is the bilge. And the flex is just about the same as the brigantine, since they are to be applying pressure on the enemy crew as much as possible, and helping the bilge whenever absolutely necessary. And for the cannoneer, you better be non-stop firing at the enemy. The only time you should be off cannons is during emergencies or helping to kill any boarders that manage to slip by your crew. Before we get into the strategies chapter of this episode, I should go over specific ship components that could help during battle. Starting things off, we have the crow's nest. The crow's nest is perched at the top of your main mast. This harbors the flag box of your ship, allowing you to change the flag of your ship on the go. But the crow's nest also allows you to spot ships on the horizon. Next, we have the water barrel. This barrel holds 3 buckets of water to assist in the removal of fire on your ship. Whether you're fighting ghost ships or arsonist pirates, the water barrel is your go-to for water convenience. Make sure to refill it with the lever on the side though. One niche mechanic on the brigantine and sloop are the opening hatches. The sloop owns 2 hatches, one on each side by the ladders. These can be opened and closed from the inside of the sloop. You can close it to keep enemy players from shooting at you through the window, or you can open it to fire at enemies yourself. It also doubles as an additional spot to bail water out of your ship. For the brigantine, there's a hatch next to the stairs, between the cannonball barrels and the captain's quarters. But this window can be shot through, allowing you to close the window for cover while reloading. But most importantly, this window can be used to repair the hole behind the quest table, so you don't have to waste the time to run all the way around. The harpoon is great for harpooning loot and players out of the water, but they can also be used to harpoon players off the enemy ship. The harpoon can go through cannons on ships, so make sure to fire the harpoon at enemy cannoneers to yoink them onto your ship for a quick kill, though I would recommend to let your crew know, just in case you can't kill them swiftly. The holes on the ship, made whenever the ship takes damage, have different sizes, depending on the damage taken. Generally, there are the 3 main sizes, usually referred to as tiers 1 through 3. A tier 1 hole can be achieved when bumping into a shoreline, being shot by a singular scatter shot or a singular chain shot. A tier 2 hole can be made by a normal cannonball, or if a tier 1 hole takes repeated abuse. And if a tier 2 hole takes repeated abuse, then it can turn into a tier 3 hole. Each of these holes will pour water into the ship at different rates. The higher the tier, the faster the water floods the ship. But each of these holes only costs 1 wood plank to repair, though the higher the tier, the longer it takes to repair it. The cannons of a ship should be reserved for specific roles of the crew. For example, on the galleon, the first cannons should be reserved for the helm, since they are closest to the wheel. The second cannon should be for the bilge, since they are closer to the stairway. The third cannons are for the flex, since they're closer to help with repairs. And the fourth cannons are for the cannoneer, since they're the last of the line to help with repairs. For a brigantine, the first cannon should be for the flex, and the second cannon should be for the cannoneer. And for the sloop, the only cannon should go to the only cannoneer, but I think that one is a bit obvious. The masts, capstan, and wheel can all be repaired. When a mast is knocked, you can pull the mast back with the rigging you used to change the sail length, and once raised, you can use 3 separate wood planks to repair the mast. This also goes for the capstan and the wheel of the ship. The bigger the ship, the more the capstan can be damaged, and the more it'll take to repair. And finally, we have the grate. Each ship has at least 1 grate on them, the sloop and galleon having 1, and the brigantine having 2. The grate is another way of bailing water out of your ship, but for the galleon, its reliability can save you crucial time to bail out all of the incoming water. While for the brig and sloop's grates having a more difficult hitbox to get through, the galleon's is a larger and more consistent with successful buckets. If you position yourself next to the map table and throw the water out of the grate, you should find that the water is not splashing back in, though do be careful of crates and players being in the way of the grate, as it can block any water leaving your boat. Finally, now we're on to the tips and strategies chapter. When it comes to masts during ship combat, your relationship with them should change depending on the ship. For the sloop, and as a helm, you'll want to prioritize it over everything else, unless you're about to sink. For the brig, you'll want to prioritize having at least 1 mast up. If the enemy is skilled, then you'll never want to take time away from repairs and shooting to fix the front mast, but do prioritize the back mast if possible. And for the galleon, don't Don't prioritize any of the masts. Simply aim for theirs as well. Most galleon crews won't save their masts at all during the heat of battle. Sure, if one or both crews are trying to sail away for reset, then yeah, fix those sails. But if you're in a bare-knuckle brawl with the enemy, don't waste the precious time trying to save any of the masts. They simply just take too long. But if you have lost all of your masts on any ship, then you've entered what the community calls a state of turtling. Turtling is the act of defending your ship while you're in a losing position, which usually happens when you've lost your masts. At this point, you're going to want to make sure their masts are knocked too, to regain even ground. Once both crews are demobilized, it simply becomes a turtle tug of war, both crews attempting to deal more damage to the other, while both crews hastily repair. Your goal, when turtling, is to make sure that your boat is more repaired than the enemy's, while the cannoneer/flex apply more pressure. If your crew has little to no holes in the ship while the enemy has reduced their rate of fire on you, then that is the perfect time to try and repair a mast, so you can regain movement and a rotation around the enemy. As long as your cannoneers keep pressure on the enemy's cannons, so they can't fire any chain shots at your mast, you'll have regained a winning condition. Another tip for spiraling around a downed enemy ship: if they are trying to keep angle with your ship's rotation, so you and your crew are only getting shots on one side, then I would recommend that the helm raises sails, so the enemy will start to lose angle on you, and eventually show their other side. Getting holes on both sides of the enemy ship is a sure way to ease your enemy into the icy depths below, but a smart crew would send someone to fix or spin the wheel and angle to your current position. And during that moment, your cannoneers must aim for their helm, so you can deal damage to players, knock them around, and even damage their wheel, keeping them from saving their angle. And once they lose their angle, you must spread your shots on both sides of their ship to hasten their sinking. However, if they end up saving their angle, then it's up to the helm to lower the sail a bit, to invoke the enemy to take even more time away from repairs to save the angle. Keep repeating this process until the enemy is sunk. Also, if you ever find yourself with knocked masts and the enemy is sailing around you, try your best to keep your ship angled to fire at theirs, while your crewmates attempt to knock their masts. When battling, the side you decide to fight the enemy ship on will matter, and will depend on the ship you're sailing on. As the helm on Sloop, you'll always want to keep the enemy on your left side of your ship, since there are less holes, more cover for bailing water, and the mast won't obscure the cannoneer when fallen. On Brigantine, the helm will also want to keep the enemy on the left side, since the masts obscure the right side much more than the left. And for the galleon, you'll actually want to keep your enemies on the right side, since the masts mostly obscure the left side. Also, make sure to never nose the enemy. Nosing is letting your front ship face the enemy's broadside. This allows your enemy to fire cannonballs down the lane of your ship, potentially landing one balls on your crew, while making it even easier to knock your masts. Also, this allows the enemy time to dial in their shots before your crew can, and without the risk of you firing back. So don't ever nose the enemy. One tip I have for the cannoneers on the Brigantine is aiming for their flex cannoneer. This zone covers the back mast, the flex cannoneer, and the stairs. Aiming for 3 targets in one small area can deal great inconvenience to the entire enemy crew, potentially one-balling the enemy, disrupting bales of water, and knocking the back mast with cannonballs. Bonus fact, a mast takes 3 cannonballs to take down. This goes for all ships. When fighting another crew, and you find yourself struggling, whether it be from a lack of supplies, or they're simply more in the zone than you are, then I would recommend using your surroundings, whether it be gunpowder barrels in the water, or skeleton forts. With inactive skeleton forts, you could use kegs and attempt to board them, or you could simply use the siege towers and bait them closer. Using the towers could allow you to knock their mast and leave them in a vulnerable position within an angle of a stationary cannon, which could allow your crew to return with the ship and fire upon them while you keep firing from an alternate angle. Or if you're out of supplies, you could board them while your crew lays siege. Alternatively, your crew could keep them busy while you grab a keg from the island. A sloop will want to take advantage of its faster maneuverability by trying to take sharper turns, or anchor turning to throw off the enemy. But a sloop must also understand that they are at a disadvantage in manpower, only having 2 sailors to handle all of the jobs of a ship, meaning they are the least capable of sending boarders on a whim, especially when fighting bigger crews. The Brigantine used to be the chaser ship, but is now more of a middle ground, faster than the sloop with wind while slower without, and opposite when it faces the galleon. But with the galleon, it has the manpower to send constant boarders towards smaller ships, while also firing a barrage of cannon fire. The galleon may be slow when it comes to sailing against wind and maneuverability, but you never want to face the broadside of a galleon. I would recommend lighting the galleon up with fire or blunder bombs to disorientate. Landing firebombs on the captain's quarters can cause a myriad of flames to spread elsewhere on the ship, taking the average crew an incredible amount of time to clear. And blunder bombs affect galleons the most, causing them to spin like a top when multiple hit on the front or back. Note, when you're hitting ships with blunder bombs, the more you hit in a row causes exponential knockback, so keep that in mind. And one final tip for this video, only send boarders when the enemy crew is running, or if they have a dead teammate and their masts are down. Sending boarders at the wrong time can cause you and your crew to slip into a losing position, since if your crew dies when attempting to board, gaining no additional ground, then your crew is at a disadvantage. But that's all I have for today, and man was that a lot of info. But the next time we discuss PvP, we will discuss hand-to-hand combat within the Sea of Thieves. And boy, is there a lot to talk about there. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned some things. There's a lot to discuss when it comes to the combat of this game, and it's no easy task to remember it all during actual combat. So the very best advice I could give to you is to keep at it. Everyone sinks. Everyone loses a stack of treasure that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into. It's not great losing a lot of loot, but it's part of the game. No one can win them all, but that's what makes winning all the better. As long as you know what you're doing, whether you've got a good crew or just a good head on your shoulders, you can get better. And once you get better at PvP, you'll get to experience the greater parts of this game. Being able to deal with those who seek to wrong you allows you to witness even more people who are wanting to share wonderful moments with you. Whether you're a bloodthirsty pirate or a gentle soul only wanting to befriend others, learning how to PvP will help you complete your journeys your way. And that's the magic of this beautiful world. Cheers.